She was always the golden child, untouchable, always right, always first. Then came Thanksgiving, and I finally spoke the truth I'd been holding in. Forks paused mid-air, her smile vanished, and the room went completely silent. In a single sentence, I upended our entire family hierarchy. My whole life, I had been the quiet shadow behind my sister's blinding spotlight. But that Thanksgiving, a single thrown wine glass didn't just stain the carpet red. It shattered the perfect illusion my family had been living, revealing a truth no one was ready to face. I was 11 when I first noticed the pattern. My sister, Clara, always got a bigger slice of cake. When I asked my mom, Eleanor, why, she just smiled, patted my head, and said, "Because she's special, honey." That was the start. I was the background character, the footnote. Clara was the shining star, the miracle, the center of the universe. She's 33 now, sharp-jawed, sharp-tongued, with relatives convinced she was heaven-sent. Me, my name's Alex. I'm 30, and for most of my life, I kept my head down, stayed quiet, and avoided ruffling her perfectly preened feathers. But this Thanksgiving didn't go as anyone expected, especially not Clara, and definitely not my mom, who seemed completely blindsided mid-dinner. Not even my dad, Robert, who paused for 10 seconds before whispering something that almost made me laugh. But before we get to the wine, the tears, and the whispered accusations, let me explain how we got there. This wasn't a single bad dinner. It was years of silent pressure, slowly building until it finally burst at the worst possible time. We grew up in a small town in Indiana. Everyone knew everyone's business. My parents, Robert and Eleanor, were both teachers. Strict but fair, everyone said. But that fairness didn't apply if your name wasn't Clara. Clara could do no wrong. Straight A's, ballet, honor societies, every remarkable achievement belonged to her. When she entered a room, my parents practically stood at attention. She didn't just bring home report cards, she brought home promises of greatness. Clara would be a doctor. Clara would change the world. Meanwhile, if I brought home a B+ in algebra, I got the look and a reminder to try harder. I wasn't a bad kid. I kept to myself, earned decent grades, played guitar, worked at a bike shop, but I wasn't spectacular. And maybe that would have been fine if my parents treated us equally. They didn't. Not even close. I still remember one Christmas. Clara was 15, I was 12. She got a brand new sleek white MacBook. I got a stack of used books on Focus. My dad patted my shoulder and said, "These will help you catch up to your sister." That was the year I stopped asking for anything. Fast forward to college. Clara went to Northwestern on a full-ride pre-med scholarship with fancy internships. I went to a small state school for computer science. When I told my parents, my mom blinked and said, "Oh, but Clara's working in oncology. Isn't that exciting?" That was the start of my silent years. I stopped trying to impress them. I stopped sharing updates about research assistantships, honors, my move to Seattle, or my first six-figure job. They didn't ask, and I didn't offer. Deep down, I knew what they thought of me. But sometimes being ignored gives you space. Space to grow, to work, to build without interference. Over the years, I taught myself machine learning, data architecture, and back-end systems. At 25, I joined a startup that got acquired 2 years later. I invested my payout, built my own AI logistics company, and by 29 had 11 employees, major clients, and a net worth just shy of $7.2 million. I lived modestly, drove a used Lexus, kept quiet, still called home sometimes, played my part. "How's work?" they'd ask. It's going well, I'd say. Then immediately, the conversation pivoted to Clara, her grants, her fiancé, Dr. Victor Maxwell, our future son-in-law, according to Mom, a neurosurgeon. I swear, I could have told them I was designing a spaceship and they'd still ask about Clara's scrubs. I didn't hate my sister at first. She was just doing her thing. But over time, she got colder, smugger, believing the praise my parents wrote about her. At gatherings, she'd say, "So, Alex, still doing computers?" And when I replied, "Yes," she'd chuckle, "Well, we need tech guys too." That comment stung, especially last Thanksgiving, as she swirled wine and detailed Victor's symposium invitation in Geneva, while my parents clapped like seals. I nodded, then left for the porch. This year, I decided to act differently. No grand reveal, no sports car, no tux. I wouldn't hide anymore. I'd answer honestly, speak up, and not downplay my achievements. Not out of spite or pride, just because I was tired of pretending to be 12 again. Thanksgiving at my parents' house. Clara and Victor were already there. She hugged me like a distant relative. "Wow, you clean up nice," she said. I wore a button-up and jeans. Victor shook my hand, firm and overcompensating. Dinner began normally. Turkey, mashed potatoes, the usual. Mom even placed name cards. Clara at the head, Victor next, me 2 spots down. I didn't mind. I'd been seated closer to the garage before. The first crack came when my cousin Sophia, 19, asked about my work. "I run a software company," I said casually. Mom jumped in. "Oh, Alex does IT support, I think." "Not quite," I corrected. I founded a company building AI tools for optimizing freight and logistics, major contracts, predictive algorithms, waste reduction. A beat of silence. Victor raised an eyebrow. I smiled. Last quarter, we onboarded a client with $400 million in annual logistics spend. Dad blinked. "You never mentioned that." Clara laughed. "That's cute, Alex." Always had a vivid imagination. Sophia leaned forward. "Wait, seriously?" I slid our website across the table. Eyes widened. The room's energy shifted subtly. Mom confused, Dad stunned, Clara annoyed. Victor poured more wine. Questions came faster. "Uncle David, how many employees?" "Aunt Carol, what city?" Parents glanced at each other, calculating. Then Clara asked, "So, Alex, how much do you actually make?" I paused, didn't dodge. "Last year?" "Yes, 2021. Around $850,000 in salary and bonuses, but most wealth is in equity, 83% of the company." Silence. Forks clinked on plates. Mom whispered, "You're joking." I shook my head. "Nope." Then things spiraled. Clara crossed her arms, muttered, "That's ridiculous." Mom's eyes glistened. Dad looked at me like I'd moved to Mars. Victor chuckled, condescending. "You lied to us, Alex." I stared, not at the words, but how fast the script flipped. Before I could answer, Clara threw her wine glass. It didn't shatter as in the movies. It bounced, rolled, and soaked the carpet. Mom gasped. Dad stood, jaw twitching. Clara sat, arms crossed, breathing like a self-righteous dragon. "I can't believe this," Mom said. "Why hide this from us, Alex?" "Hide?" I wasn't hiding anything. I spoke calmly. I just stopped trying to impress people who didn't want to listen. Dad scoffed. I looked at him. "Isn't that fair?" He opened his mouth, closed it, glanced at Clara, then sat down. Silence followed for 5 minutes. Mom smoothed her sweater, visibly composing herself. "Alex, sweetheart, you have to understand how this looks. We're your parents. We should have known. You should have told us." We assumed you were doing fine. We didn't expect this. She gestured vaguely at me, as if I were wearing a crown I hadn't earned. It was overwhelming. I could feel every gaze at the table flicking between us like a tennis match. Cousin Sophia had gone silent, her fork frozen midair. Uncle David chewed mechanically, pretending I wasn't there. Even Victor looked unsure which side he was on. Clara broke the silence again. "You always had a chip on your shoulder, Alex. Honestly, this explains a lot." She leaned forward, wine-stained lips curling into a smirk. "You've always been resentful." I could feel it every time we were in the same room. You hated being the underachiever. And now, this whole millionaire tech genius thing, supposed to make up for it? That was it. I met her gaze directly. "No, Clara, this isn't about you." She laughed, a full, genuine laugh. "Oh, please, of course it is. You had to make a scene." "I didn't steal anything," I said. "You just assumed I'd stay quiet forever." Then, as if on cue, my mother placed her hand over Clara's and said softly, "Clara, honey, maybe we should all just take a breath." There it was again, her quiet gesture of comfort, the subtle alignment of sides. No one had comforted me when wine was thrown. No one asked if I was okay. Their instinct was to protect her. Something in me cracked. I stood slowly, picking up my plate. "I think I'll eat in the living room." My mom blinked. "Don't be dramatic." "I'm not," I said. "I'm just done pretending this is normal." I walked out, without waiting for a response. The silence that followed me felt heavier than the food in my hands. In the living room, I sat on the couch and started cutting into my turkey. My hands were steady, but my jaw clenched so tight I could hear it click. A few minutes later, someone sat beside me. I expected Sophia, or maybe one of the younger cousins. It was Victor. "Hey," he said casually. I didn't look up. "Hey," he cleared his throat. "So, you really built all that yourself?" I finally turned to him. "Yeah, what?" He shrugged lopsidedly. "Just surprised, that's all. I always figured Clara was the overachiever in the family." "She is," I said. "At least, that's the official story." He chuckled, like we were two guys swapping stories over beers. "Man, she's going to lose it over this." "She already did," I said, nodding toward the dining room. "She's probably telling everyone I faked it that this is some long game to make her look bad." I froze mid-bite. Of course she was. Victor leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling as if he'd seen this movie before. "You know, I used to think the family's adoration was cute. Like, wow, they really love their daughter. But after a while, I realized it's a cult." "A cult?" I asked, caught off guard. He nodded. "You don't notice it until you're on the outside. Your mom talks about her like she's a myth. Your dad quotes her like a political speech. And Clara? She believes every word. I've never met someone so obsessed with their own reflection." I stared at him, trying to decide if this was a trap. "Then why are you marrying her?" He smirked. "I didn't say I was." That shut me up. He stood, brushing imaginary lint from his slacks. "Just thought you should know what's being said back there. Good luck." And with that, he left, leaving me with a plate of turkey and 100 thoughts bouncing around like marbles in a tin can. A few minutes later, Sophia slipped in. She perched on the armrest like a bird testing the air. "Hey," she said gently. "That was intense." "Yeah," I replied. She hesitated. "I just wanted to say, I think it's really cool what you've built. I had no idea. They never talk about you, you know?" That stung more than I expected. "I know," I said. She glanced toward the hallway, then back. Anyway, I just wanted you to hear that someone's proud of you. I nodded, grateful. Thanks. She left a minute later, and I returned to my thoughts. I kept waiting for someone, anyone, to apologize, but no one did. Instead, I heard muffled voices from the dining room, urgent and low. Then footsteps. Then my mother crying. Took everything in me not to roll my eyes. That wasn't hurt. I knew that cry. It was the cry of someone cornered, trying to summon sympathy before the narrative slipped from her control. And sure enough, not 5 minutes later, my dad appeared. He didn't sit, just stood awkwardly, like a substitute teacher about to give a lecture he didn't write. "Son," he began, "I think it's time we had a serious conversation. Here we go." I set my plate on the coffee table and crossed my arms. She's shaken because I told the truth. He scratched the back of his neck. No, he said quickly. This whole situation, she felt caught us off guard. And I get it. A betrayal? You've been working hard. You kept this part of my life hidden. Really? And then I dropped it on Thanksgiving was like a grenade. Aggressive. That's not disrespectful. Fair. You know what's not fair? Your mom's shaken. I raised my voice. Spending 30 years being treated like a backup plan while Clara got a standing ovation for breathing. His expression hardened. "That's not true," he said. "Yes, it is," I said. "Every birthday, every graduation, every family dinner. She was the main event. I was the intermission." He looked genuinely stunned, like he'd never considered the collateral damage of their golden child narrative. "I'm not asking you to rewrite the past," I said, quieter. "I'm just asking you to stop acting like I owe you guilt for doing something right." He stared for a long moment, then gave a tight nod. "We'll talk more later." And just like that, he turned and walked away. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a retreat. By the time I returned to the dining room, dessert had been served. Pumpkin pie, whipped cream, coffee. No one looked at me, not even Clara. She sat stiffly, red-eyed and silent, like mourning a tragedy no one else could see. I took my seat quietly and reached for a slice. Finally, my mom broke the silence. "Well, I hope you're happy." I paused mid-bite. "Excuse me? You've humiliated your sister. You've embarrassed this family. And for what? To brag?" I set the fork down. There it was, the final pivot. I was no longer the disappointment. I was the villain. And I knew something fundamental had shifted, something that polite smiles or phone calls couldn't undo. This wasn't just about Thanksgiving anymore. This was about the truth stepping into the light and the people who couldn't bear it. I wasn't done, not even close. I left the table with a slice of cold pumpkin pie wrapped in a paper towel and drove back to my Airbnb in silence. No music, no calls, just the hum of tires on pavement and the slow burn of betrayal. When I got to the Airbnb, I sat on the bed, staring at the slice of pie, wondering, how did telling the truth make me the villain? All my life, I'd swallowed slights too small to notice, but together, they built a wall I wasn't allowed to climb. And when I finally stood at the top, looking down from a place I built with my own hands, I was punished for not staying where they left me. I barely slept. My mind replayed my mother's face when I told her the truth. Not proud, not curious, not surprised. Hurt. Like I had stabbed her in the back. By morning, 3 texts awaited me. One from Sophia, "You okay?" One from Victor, "They're spinning, just FYI." And one from my mom, "Call me, we need to talk." I ignored them for an hour, drinking weak coffee and staring at a blank TV screen. Then curiosity got the best of me, and I called her. She answered on the second ring. "Alex," Her voice tight, rehearsed. I'm glad you called. You asked me to, I said. Well, yes, I wanted to clear the air. She paused. I've been thinking. Things got out of hand yesterday. Emotions were high. Your sister is still processing everything, and so are we. This was a lot to take in. I ignored the tone. We've always wanted the best for you, but Clara, she's worked so hard to get where she is, right? And I haven't. You know that's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant, Mom. Always what you meant. Another pause. I could hear her breathing through her nose, like when she was annoyed I hadn't emptied the dishwasher. I think it would be a good idea, she said finally, if you apologized to your sister. That actually made me laugh. You're kidding. She's devastated. You humiliated her in front of the entire family. You ambushed us, Alex. I sat in stunned silence. You think I planned that? I asked. Well, she hesitated. It certainly felt like a performance. A performance would have involved fireworks and a saxophone solo. I answered a question, I said. You showed off, she snapped, dropping the gentle tone. You made her feel small on purpose. You embarrassed her. Something inside me twisted. Not rage, not yet, but a slow, tightening coil of clarity. Mom, I said, voice low, you do realize she threw wine at me, right? She insulted me. You accused me of lying, and somehow you're more upset that people stopped clapping for her for 5 minutes. He didn't respond. I'm not apologizing for being successful, and I am definitely not apologizing for your discomfort. She exhaled sharply. Then I don't know what else there is to say. Maybe nothing. And I hung up. That was the moment something snapped in me. Not anger, but resolve. For the first time, I saw the situation not as a wounded son desperate for approval, but as a man who didn't owe anyone anything. The betrayal didn't end there. 2 days later, I got a text from Victor. Check your email. I did. My stomach dropped. It was a forwarded thread from Clara's email, sent to the family. Subject: concerning Alex's claims. She calmly questioned the legitimacy of my company, claimed she couldn't verify client contracts, suggested I might be exaggerating success, or worse, involved in shady dealings. She implied I might be in a manic phase. Then, casually, I say all of this with love. I just think we need to be cautious before enabling any delusions. Alex needs support, not applause. Support, not applause. I sat stunned, not because she doubted me, but because she was trying to make everyone else doubt me too. And it worked. Hours later, emails arrived, one from Aunt Carol, asking if I'd exaggerated, and one from my mom. Alex, your sister showed me the emails. We love you, but we're worried. Let us in. That broke me. Let us in. Where were they when I was a teenager, building code alone? When I got my first patent, first client, I called Victor. He picked up instantly. I assume you saw it, I said, still processing. What's wrong with her? He sighed. Want the truth? Always. She's always been like this. But this is new. Next level. She's trying to destroy your credibility. She's scared. The crown slipped, and she's grabbing at anything to keep it. I paused. Why send it to me? Because you deserve to know, and because I think I might be done with all this. His voice sounded final. You're leaving her. I don't know yet, but I see it now. The manipulation, the control, the way your parents feed it. You should come back, say nothing, just show up. To what? Let them keep painting me as delusional? No, he said. To show them you're not going anywhere. To remind them you don't need their approval. I didn't respond, but the idea planted itself like a seed. The next day, I went back to my parents' house. I didn't call ahead. I knocked at 3 p.m., wearing jeans holding a thick folder. My mom answered, surprised. Alex, are you all right? I'd like to talk, I said, stepping inside. She hesitated, then nodded. My dad was in the living room. Clara sat on the couch, sipping tea with a smug expression that faltered the moment she noticed the folder in my hand. Good, she said, setting her cup down. I'm glad you came. We really need to… No, I interrupted. I need to say something. The room went silent. I sat across from them and placed the folder on the table. Slowly, I opened it and spread out the documents. Company registration papers, bank statements, a redacted client contract, the latest valuation from our accountant, shareholder breakdowns, tax filings, and photos from the most recent investor meeting. Then, I opened my laptop and played a short clip from a conference I had spoken at months ago in San Diego, fielding questions about neural network scalability. When it ended, I looked at them. I said, I didn't want to prove anything, but since someone chose to smear me behind my back, it's time to bring receipts. My dad's face was unreadable. My mom looked stunned, as if her brain had just been unplugged. And Clara, her expression twisted into something bitter, unfamiliar. I never meant to smear you, she said, voice trembling. You accused me of being mentally unstable, I replied. You sent emails to the entire family saying I fabricated everything. I was just worried, she snapped. You ambushed us. You lied. I never lied, she countered. I spoke louder now. I stopped telling you things because you didn't care. And now that I've built something real, bigger than anything you imagined for me, you're trying to tear it down because it doesn't fit the story you wrote. You're twisting this. You think you're so perfect? You think it's just about money? She said, standing. It's not about money, I interrupted. It's about respect, about finally being seen. And you, everyone, can't handle the fact that I did it without you. My mom stepped forward to calm things, but I raised my hand. No, I'm not here for a group hug. I'm here to set the record straight. I packed up the folder, slid the laptop into my bag, and stood. Looking Clara in the eye, I said for the last time, I'm not your shadow, and I never was. Then I walked out, finally feeling free of the obligation to explain myself. I wasn't leaving the family I grew up with. I was walking toward the person I had become. I thought stepping out of that house would feel like closure, like slamming the door on years of being second best. But it didn't feel victorious. It felt hollow, like lighting a match in a room full of childhood memories and watching them burn. The silence that followed my exit was deafening. No one chased me, no one called my name, no apology, no acknowledgement, just the quiet click of the door as I stepped into the crisp Indiana air. I drove aimlessly, passing the library where I first taught myself to code, the street where Clara won a science fair with a baking soda volcano, the diner where Sunday pancakes came with extra whipped cream for her. Every landmark felt tainted, like I was walking through a museum that had erased me from its story. I finally stopped at a park, empty except for a squirrel tearing into a wrapper. I sat down, letting the wind bite through my coat. I tried to think, but there was nothing left to process, only to feel. I felt tired, deep in my bones, exhausted. I had fought to become someone worth noticing. When I finally revealed what I had built, they didn't see me. They saw a threat. And family stories, especially toxic ones, don't change easily. The next morning, things got worse. An email from my mom. Alex, we need to discuss boundaries. I opened it with shaking hands, hoping for an olive branch. There was none. My presence at Christmas was too disruptive. Clara was still recovering emotionally. Space was healthier for everyone. Space, like I was radioactive. I shut the laptop, pressed my hands to my face, and cried for the first time in years. Not loud sobs, just quiet grief. I mourned not a person, but the idea of a family I had pretended to belong to, one that had never truly been mine. I realized I had spent my life trying to earn their respect, and maybe I never would. I stayed in Indiana longer than planned, hiding in my Airbnb. Sophia checked in occasionally. Victor sent a thumbs-up emoji once. I didn't reply. I was emotionally spent and ashamed, not of who I was, but of how long I had let them define me. I ordered food, binged shows, tried to read leadership books I couldn't focus on. I told myself I was relaxing, but I was grieving. Then I saw a post from Clara on Facebook, a smiling selfie, captioned, "Grateful for family this Thanksgiving and for the strength." The comments praised her strength, dismissed me as jealous, called me ungrateful. I didn't respond. The post spoke for itself. She wasn't just rewriting the story, she was weaponizing it. I could have fought back. I had proof, resources, a platform. But I realized, you don't win by proving them wrong. You win by walking away. And that's what I did. Slowly, quietly, one step at a time. I canceled the auto-renewal on the family photo cloud, unfollowed Clara, turned off email notifications, blocked my father, not out of anger, but because I didn't want to keep staring at silence. I opened a spreadsheet and began planning my life, not revenge, but my own. The center of my universe would no longer be their approval, and as I stared at the blinking cursor, I realized something chilling. They had no idea what I was truly capable of. What they thought was the peak of my success was only the beginning. I left Indiana in a snowstorm, loaded my bags into my car, and drove to Chicago for my flight home. The roads were slick, the radio low, the drive quiet. And in that quiet, I felt something I hadn't in years: lightness. I was no longer dragging bricks labeled, "Prove yourself, make them proud." It was over, not because I had lost, but because I stopped playing. Back in Seattle, my condo felt like a parallel life. My plants barely survived. My neighbor's cat patrolled the hall. Slack notifications pinged with work and jokes. But I wasn't the same Alex who left for Indiana. The first thing I did, schedule an all-hands meeting. I logged on, saw familiar faces: Jessica from marketing, Mark from sales, Raj from product, 3 original devs who had built the backbone of the company with me. I didn't give a usual update. I shared a story. Thanksgiving, growing up ignored, building in silence, finally speaking the truth, and the fallout. I told them I wanted the company to be a place where no one shrinks themselves, ... where no one waters down their story. Silence hung for a moment. Then Jessica smiled. "That's the best Monday kickoff I've ever heard." Raj clapped. Mark typed in chat, "Alex main character energy." That meeting changed everything. Over months, we didn't just grow, we exploded. 2 new clients, viral demo videos, attention from venture funds, podcasts, a TED-style talk. For the first time, I didn't downplay our success. With growth came money. I upgraded my condo to a modern townhouse with a rooftop garden and space for a recording studio. I hired a personal trainer and financial advisor. I invested strategically, not just in tech, but in people, small business owners, artists, coders from underrepresented communities. I called the micro investment fund First Shadow. I had lived in the shadows. Now I was giving others the light. Weeks later, Sophia sent a screenshot of a Facebook thread about career opportunities. A cousin suggested contacting me. My mother commented, "Let's not exaggerate. He's always been theatrical." Expected, not shocking. They wouldn't change, but I didn't need them. For every one of them, there were 10 others who saw, respected, and believed in me. 6 months later, a top logistics firm signed a 7-figure deal. At the signing table, their CEO said, "I have to admit, I thought you were older. Where did you learn all this?" I smiled. In a quiet house, with a lot of time to think. Victor called months later. "She's unraveling," he said. "She keeps asking about you." "I didn't want that," I said quietly. "I know," he replied, "but it happened." "Do you regret it?" I asked. "No, not anymore," he said. Media attention followed. Mid-tier tech blogs, industry newsletters, and one story went viral. The quiet millionaire who built a logistics empire without Silicon Valley. I didn't
Then
seek
came
the
a
spotlight.
wedding invitation.
I had stopped
Clara
shrinking.
and Victor.
Perfectly curated, with no room for me but as a background figure. But I had already started my quiet revenge. Not public humiliation, but the kind that reveals truth. I noticed a discrepancy in Clara's medical board certification. Public information, but enough to pull threads. I contacted Maya, a podcast host known for exposing curated facades. Together, we featured Clara in a short series called Professional Pretenders. I RSVP'd to the wedding with Sophia. The podcast dropped that morning. By the ceremony, everyone knew the uncomfortable truth. Clara smiled through it, but I saw the strain, the micro-tension, the half-second too loud laugh. Her curated image was cracking, not by force, but by reality. During dinner, she approached me. "I know what you did," she whispered. "You couldn't hold on to it," I said calmly. Her smile cracked. "You think this makes you better than me?" "No, I know it does." She blinked, stunned, then straightened, sipped her wine, and walked away. Sophia nudged me. "You okay?" I nodded. For the first time, I was. I was no longer waiting for applause. I was the author of my story. The wedding ended like most do. Laughter, music, fading crowds. But beneath the glitter, tension hummed. Next morning, my phone lit up. Missed calls from my parents. A text from Clara. "You win. I hope it was worth it." I didn't respond. It was never about winning. The podcast surpassed 300,000 plays. Clara's hospital requested a review of her credentials. Protocol, but humiliating. Wedding photos were stunning, but social perception had shifted. Victor relocated. My parents sent a clumsy olive branch email. No apology, just words of conditional love. I archived it. Life moved on. My company hit new milestones, opened an Austin office. I mentored young founders, giving them tools, space, and validation I never had. I shared my story selectively, enough to inspire but never define me. That, I realized, was the final part of my revenge. Not exposure, but building a better life while those who dismissed me scrambled to rewrite their roles. Almost a year after that Thanksgiving, a package arrived at my office. A hardcover family photo album. Old and familiar. A note inside, 6 words in my mother's handwriting. "We should have seen you sooner." I didn't cry, call, or display it. I placed it quietly on the bottom shelf. My story wasn't about them anymore. It was about me, and I was finally writing it on my own terms.